The issue of fast-tracking, free fast-tracking, is something that has been announced over the past few days, but I think I also heard the Prime Minister saying that they needed to hire more people to process passports. I had not heard that before, and I'm sure that we'll get more detail from the Home Secretary. Indeed, the Prime Minister assured the House that we would. Generally, on the Iraq exchanges, I think that what happened in part was that last week the Commons were really stung by the fact that there was a lot of criticism for MPs that Iraq didn't come up at all. Basically, people felt that, and I think it was a very fair criticism, that given that the scale of the crisis was emerging, it would have been appropriate for MPs or indeed frontbenchers to actually question the Prime Minister about that issue. They didn't, so the tone this time demonstrated that the Commons has woken up to the seriousness of that issue. I think it's another point of order, so I think that gives us the opportunity to give you a sense of how those exchanges did play out. And Ed Miliband asked 6 full questions on Iraq. It was very meaty, serious stuff, and the final question and answer gives you a flavour.
Everything we are seeing across this region begs a fundamental question about whether it can develop a politics where people live alongside each other as citizens rather than dividing along sectarian, ethnic or religious lines. And does he finally agree with me that while we can and should provide assistance to make that happen, in the end, it is about the political will of those in the region that will determine whether this happens or not?
I agree with the right honourable gentleman that I think it would be a mistake to believe that the only answer to these problems is the hard attack of direct intervention. We know that that can create problems of itself, but I'd also disagree with those people who think this is nothing to do with us, and if they want to have some sort of extreme Islamist regime in the middle of Iraq, that won't affect us. It will.
Despite the fact that these were, as you can hear, they're very serious exchanges, it's hard not to conclude that there's a general sense of impotence, though, when it comes to what is going on in Iraq and more broadly in the region at the moment. And I don't think that one should ignore that fact. One other question that really, I think, is an important one that clearly the British people will be very concerned about is the issue of individuals going overseas to fight, being radicalised, whether it be in this country or indeed particularly obviously in the conflict that they are then getting involved in Iraq, and what the Prime Minister is going to do about making sure those people can't come back to the UK.
Most important of all is how to keep our citizens safe here at home. Now, the Leader of the Opposition asked specifically about the action that we're taking. We will be legislating in this session of Parliament to make the planning of terrorist attacks overseas illegal here in the UK. We'll be making sure that our security, intelligence and policing resources are focused particularly on this part of the world and the danger of British people travelling there, becoming radicalised and returning to the UK. We've already stopped a number of people travelling. We've taken away passports, including using the new powers that we legislated for in the last Parliament, and we'll continue to do everything we can to keep our country safe.
The only bit, actually, Dermot, where we did get back to the familiar rabble-rousing PMQs was when Ben Bradshaw asked the Prime Minister how his campaign to stop Jean-Claude Juncker becoming President of the European Commission was going, and the Prime Minister really piled into a response to him where he said that this was an issue of principle, that it should be the elected leaders on the European Council who decided this job, and basically saying to his fellow leaders they should have the courage of their convictions to actually follow through on what they believe. He sounded distinctly fatalistic, really, when he was addressing the same issue in response to a question from our own Adam Bolton yesterday at the news conference with the Chinese Premier. Today it was a lot more defiance, and he really, at the end of the question, he actually said thank you to Ben Bradshaw for getting him so G'd up.